so far the instrument has been in Dominican Republic, Iraq, Jordan. I have the list here. I probably don't need to read it, but 12 countries. And East Timor there, simply because that was not done by RTI, an independent. I think got some funding from the World Bank and worked with the Ministry of Education in East Timor to do an EGMA there. Other application that we have just not heard about because it is publicly available. So these are the countries other than East Timor RTI has done the applications in. The results are not available for all of these countries. As many of you know, it can be a long process to actually collecting the data, analyzing, having the results, to having the ministry to approve the results and be willing to disseminate them publicly. So the results that we are able to disseminate publicly at this point are Congo, Jordan, Kenya, Liberia, Malawi, Morocco, Nicaragua. So those are the only ones that I'm including in the next slide and a glimpse of the results, because I sort of presented some anonymously. I think it's much more useful if we start being able to where are the, you know, what the actual countries the results are coming from, where things more difficult than others, be able to put names to them. So we now oh, do we we were having a little technical issue with this particular software because I guess it's a little bit fancy for the Adobe system. Here we have it. Thank you. Okay. Can you see it? I can see it. I did full screen. Okay, so here we have, what I did was I just took the countries. This is a subset big list that I just showed you because it's that are publicly available as that have results from the end of grade and to look across the same grade in the different countries. So this is the zero, the percentage of students that could not name a single item in these subsections. And so number ID and quantity comparison at first glance you might say, oh, well, that's have that many zero scores. But remember, these are double numbers. Can the student identify the next? So if that is your bar, then I guess you're doing okay. But I would hope the bar would be. There's a question.
There's a question. Kids in grade. I want to repeat the question. What age?
I don't for all of these countries, and I mean, it's certainly we have the information in our data sets. I'll tell you, there'd be some variation between the countries.
Could you repeat the question too, please?
Oh, the question was, what are the age of the children in grade 2? And that varies by country, but we would expect it to be between 6 and 8. Okay, let's see. So for ID, again, I was saying, you know, at first glance, not zero scores, but I want to point out that if we were just going up to 0 or 1, now Malawi comes in at 7%, can only ID 1 number. So they didn't get 0, then got 47% of the children can only name 1 number. So it's So now, missing number, the samples, as I was before, might be having, for example, 4, 6, and then the student is name the next number. That was one of the examples. Nicaragua, which is this bar here in red, Nicaragua was, I think, 2 blank 6 8. And one of the things we noticed is that there seemed to be a problem in particular. Students try to do this without starting at the beginning of the series. So not just, if they were to do 1, 3, they could say 4. But if you tried thinking about 10, 11, 12, then problems. Problems for Morocco. Morocco was at 30% could not addition problem, and 50% could not subtraction problem. And those are for problems on those are 4 plus 2 addition and 6 minus 2 for subtraction. So 50% of the students could not minus 2 correctly. And word problems, an example for Nicaragua, which was here at about 25%, could not do any. One of that tests was Peter had 6 oranges. Friend ate 3 of them. How many oranges does he have left? 25% of the second Nicaragua could not answer that problem. They were offered counters to use. And a question, I think.
There's a question from Yasmin and Serene.
Sure.
If children could manipulatives on the addition and subtraction problems.
Okay. They was whether or not children manipulatives for addition and subtraction problems. For the timed section, these 2 sections, they are not given. If they were to ask for them, we wouldn't. They can use their fingers. In fact, in a lot of countries, the students aren't used to manipulatives anyway. But again, these are automated. The idea is that you want students to have these automatized. If many of the curricula by the end of grade 2, they're supposed to work on double-digit addition. So if you have the single below 10 addition automatic, then asking them to go farther and farther is going to be that much more difficult. So we want to get those automatized. And just word problems, they are able to use the counters. Another question?
There was another question, but it was answered.
Okay.
Is the test administered in a group setting or setting?
One-on-one.
One-on-one.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm forgetting to repeat. The question, is it a group one-on-one? The answer is it's one-on-one.
And another question is, how many questions for each question type? Or if there were questions, scoring 0 if there were 10.
It's asking how many question types there were for each section, pointing out that scoring 0 for if there are just 2 questions may be different from scoring 0 if there are 10 questions. And for the untimed section for comparison and missing number, there are 10. For word problems, I believe there are 5 to 6, depending. Some of the tests varied. And then for addition and subtraction and number ID, there's about 20. But again, that's timed. We don't necessarily expect them to finish all, but there's enough for them to keep going for a minute.
It looks like there's one more question coming.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right. And of course, we can also have questions after. So can we go to the next slide? Whoops, that's
Can we not see that?
Is it on the, I see an overview. We'll also about some of the discussion things will we advance. Okay, here we some of the things that we've found is that students are mastering basic competencies than would be desired, and this is desired in relation to the local curriculum. This is where they should be in the local curriculum. By grade 4 or 5, we're mastering some of these basics, but a curricula, and if we were to extrapolate from our expectations also, students are mastering these later than we would want. There's some indications of, we haven't systematically looked at this. We have some companion instruments that we've been able to use with some of the EGMA assessments, but not as systematically. So there are some indications that we've been able to correlate the use of materials or textbooks in class with performance, but overall we're seeing a little use of those things in class. There's indications that the higher performers utilize multiple strategies in terms of the problems, the addition and subtraction problems, and even the word problems, that they would use just different strategies depending on the difficulty of the item. There are many more, such as things we've started. Again, we have little glimpses of from what we've done so far, but there's a lot more to do, both in analyzing the data we already have as well as looking at new things when we collect data. Some of these are the role of language, and again, the use of strategies. What materials are being used in class and how are they being used? And is mathematics seen and taught as something to be understood or as algorithms to be memorized? And we have an inkling that it is perhaps the latter, but that's something that perhaps bears more examination. So now moving to what's next. For EGMA, I don't know if you can advance that. For EGMA, we are working on developing 2 additional sections. These were things that came out of an expert panel that we had a year ago, advising we should have sections on spatial reasoning and relational reasoning to make it not so entirely number sense focused, that there are those other areas that should be included. We're working on the development of an EGMA user's guide so that the instrument is already publicly available. To make it easier for people to use, we want to also have a user's guide available. And the further application of EGMA, ideally coupled with more math ed-driven research questions. A lot of the work that we've done so far has been in conjunction with EGRA, with the reading assessment, and a lot of times that's, especially since a lot of what we've been CID focused, the interest has been more on the reading side, and so we haven't been able to dig as much into the information we've collected related to math. For October, for this group, some of the things I'd like us to be thinking about and sharing about are some of the arguments in support and research in support of math, particularly early grade math. What are some of the things that you all know about that we can add to our argument and build our argument why it's important that math is focused on? Examples of other assessment tools and results that you might have used or seen. And sharing ideas about needed research in relation to assessment. What can we look at? What other things could we be looking at with EGMA or with other assessment tools? So that's my presentation. If there are more questions, I know the allotted time I think is sort of up, but I can stay and chat more and answer questions.
Did you want me to show the link to the PDF?
If you still have it, you know what, I think I took it off when
Ready.
Okay, great. Gabrielle's going to share the link to the instrument itself. It's also on the EdData website that was listed on the bottom of the slide. That's eddataglobal.org. It's on that website, but a direct link Gabrielle will provide. We will provide later today a direct link to the actual instrument. So you can go there through the website, but we'll give you a direct.
We have a comment from Amy Jo. She's saying,
Great.
Thank you for this excellent overview.
Oh, thank you.
So Wendy will have, maybe we'll give five minutes for questions.
Yeah, if we can stay a little bit longer if there are more questions. We might have answered them during the presentation. And you can also put questions onto the community of practice if you think of it later. this isn't your last opportunity. You can shoot a question up on that Community of Practice website, and I'll respond to it. And I'll be shooting out some other things to sort of try to engage you all in conversation around this shortly.
Yeah, so
Oh,
if
goodness.
anybody thinks of any questions later on, you can definitely put it on the site. We have a question from Luis. Do we have any? First question.
Yes.
And I'll be.
Yes? Do I have it with me? That's another question. That's actually something we're digging into.
So if anybody thinks of any questions later on, you can definitely put it on the site. We have a question from Luis.
With me.
Do
But
we
we
have
want
any
to do a
information
more,
on the psychometric
for a long
properties?
time, the instruments were
First question.
changing a lot in between an application.
Yeah.
Now that we have this stable core, we have more instances of the instrument being used where it's more similar. And so we're able to do some more in-depth psychometric analysis now on those data sets. And that's something actually we're starting to work on now.
And the second question, now that we have on the zero scores, do they correlate with each other across tasks? For example, countries doing low in one, do they do low in others?
Yes. Some are more than others. There is, I would say, a little bit more than you might see, for example, in the EGMA. Some of these sections are not as dependent on each other as in EGMA. So, for example, you might have one country that does really low in number ID, or really low in missing number, and really well in word problems. Or what we're seeing fluctuate a lot is the addition and subtraction versus word problems. You might have one country that do really poorly in addition and subtraction, but actually do well in word problems, and vice versa. And we have a feeling that has to do with some of the conceptual versus procedural issues.
One more question from Luis. Is lack of pattern recognition a likely predictor of other things, given how many zero scores there are? And are they predictive of multiplication scores, which are not tested?
Yes, we think of this is that pattern recognition is something that is actually in the curriculum of the places we've tested so far, but we think that it's not being taught or not being well. And certainly, math educators agree that it is a precursor to multiplication. The better you can do at recognizing those kinds of patterns, the more it will help you with multiplication. We have not specifically tested that. We haven't, and I would have to look at some of the, I don't know offhand the research. There might be someone online that actually knows that research, but I don't know the research in terms of the specific predictiveness of the patterns multiplication.
Just depends, and maybe the rest we can take online.
Yeah.
From the online discussion.
Sure.
We have a question from Nita from India. What was the sample size of every country?
There is an EGMA tracker on this EdData Global website. I didn't write down all those details, but we have all of the details. And there is a file on the EdData website that is the EGMA tracker, and it includes all of those.
Just a few more questions, and maybe the rest we can take online in the online discussions. A quick question from Meeta from India. What was the sample size of every country?
There is an EGMA tracker on this EdData Global website. I didn't write down all the details, but we have all of the details. And there is a file on the EdData website that is an EGMA tracker. It includes all of those sample sizes, grades, purpose of all of the applications of EGMA. So when we link directly to the EGMA instrument, we will also share a link directly to the EGMA tracker so you can.
There's a question from Teresa. What are the
fundamental competencies
in numeracy?
Well, this is.
What are the best fundamental competencies as well? In addition to the first question.
That's a whole questions that are going to be coming up. I mean, was to have the assessment focus on what are the fundamental competencies. Number sense is a huge one. And these are some core ways when we talk into one of their students' number sense.
is the big.
And what we, in fact, when we talked with the experts last year, one of their, okay, number sense is a biggie, but it's not the only thing. We also need to worry about spatial reasoning and relational reasoning. And we had actually tried with geometry, but we didn't have good. We tried to use some measures that had been used in research in the States, but it was very difficult to score, and it just didn't work as well in these contexts. So we're sort of stepping back a little and looking at other ways to measure spatial reasoning. But those are agreed that those are the areas that are absolutely necessary to master in the early grades.
I have questions, the rest we can take on.
Again, for everybody and for your questions today, and look forward to continuing the discussion on the community of practice site. Thanks again, everybody. Take care.
I think you pause.